So I'm just going to press my record button. That's great. So thank you everybody for logging on. And we have the lovely Mark with us this afternoon. It's this evening for me. It's this afternoon for you guys. And Mark's an IT consultant specialist, and he helps businesses and his clients to find the right software to implement the business, to basically stop faffing around, get on with your business, automate stuff. We decided to promptly call it Stop Wasting Your Time. So as usual, I'm going to come off the screen because otherwise it'll keep coming back to me and we want it all on Mark, and I don't like being on the screen anyway. I'm going to mute myself because of my dogs. They've been barking all afternoon, driving me insane. Mark would prefer to take questions at the end, but obviously if he's saying something, pop it in chat so you don't forget, and then we will talk about those at the end. So over to you, Mark.
Okay. Thank you, Jane. Right, hopefully you can all see my screen. This is the first little test. As Jane says, I'm an IT consultant. Not as boring as it sounds, I promise. I help businesses of all sorts of sizes to implement new software, to get the value out of the software they've got, and to automate some of their processes. And one of the areas I've done a bit of work in recently is helping therapists of various sorts. So Jane and I had a chat, and it seemed like it might be something that you guys would find interesting and useful. So hopefully you will. I will do my best to make it interesting. I'm going to talk to some slides now and just talk you through some stuff. I think depending on how fast I talk, that will probably take about 30 minutes or so. It might be a little bit longer or a bit shorter. And then we'll have some time for questions. If anyone's got any burning questions, pop them in the chat. I have got the chat open on a separate screen, so if it's relevant, I'll try and pick it up as I go through, and otherwise we'll have a talk at the end. And a special bonus for anyone that endures it right to the end, I am going to give you a free gift at the end. So there we go. So as Jane says, slightly provocatively maybe, titled this presentation "Stop Wasting Your Time." But hopefully by the end of it, you'll understand where I'm going with that. I talk to lots of clients across different business sectors, and there are certain things that frequently come out. I hope when you get to the end of it, you'll see how actually it gives you capacity to have more clients and less stress in your own business. Right. So the first challenge is I'm not pressing. Right, no. Okay, I think I'm on the right thing. Right. Okay. Why are you here? So I don't mean why are you here on this call. You can take that up with Jane. But why are you here as a business? You're here to help clients deal with some sort of a problem using whatever therapy or service you're an expert in, right? So you've obviously a range of different things that you guys will do on the call and help people with different sorts of problems. But fundamentally, you're all here because you want to help people using the skills that you've got. You're not here for some of these things. And so, for example, 4 things here that happen in your business that don't actually get you paid. They just take up your time. So setting up appointments, fairly self-explanatory, but it can be quite straightforward to set up, whether an appointment or a business meeting. But actually, can require quite a bit of toing and froing, trying to line up diaries, and particularly then if you have to reschedule anything, if you have any illness or you need to reorganize, it can get really quite time consuming. Missed appointments, I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute. This will be a varying problem for all of you depending on a number of things, but missed appointments, clearly that's time that you blocked out to be getting paid by a client, that potentially you're twiddling your thumbs. That's obviously not a great business strategy. Time you're spending doing things like your accounts, and obviously may or may not, depending on the size of your business, have bookkeepers, but all of the activity around doing your accounts, getting paid, tracking all of the sort of financial performance of your business and logging all that information. I kind of take the view with that unless you know, you're an accountant, you probably didn't go into business to do that. So it's not, you know, it's really kind of not core stuff. And then the last one's an interesting one, because a few different approaches to this, but getting reviews. So the answers will probably be different for all of you, how much time you spend in your individual business actually proactively getting reviews from customers. Those of you who do it, you will know it can be quite time consuming. You can have quite mixed results. Equally, a lot of the time when I speak to businesses, particularly small businesses, actually people sort of say, well, I don't really feel very comfortable getting reviews, so I just don't do it. But they are quite important, and we'll talk a bit more about that later in the presentation. That's really sort of 4 headline areas, but kind of with all of those, there's a sort of multitude of things underneath them that need to happen, and none of them are directly getting you paid, and none of them are actually directly helping your clients either. They are really, in essence, the kind of administrative stuff that goes around the real value add time that is what you obviously went into business to do. So how many appointments are missed? Obviously, this is going to be very different for different businesses, but I pulled together some interesting statistics. There was a study done in 2010. They looked at 542 therapy appointments across a range of different therapies in different settings, and concluded that on average 14% of all of those were missed. Some areas it was as high as 38%. Some areas it was down as low as 7%, but 14% was the average across their sample. So have a think about how that relates to your business. Does that feel about right? Does it feel too high or too low? But think about it in the context of if you're doing 7 appointments in a day, which, okay, again, maybe more than some of you do, maybe less than others, but 7 appointments in a day, that's 1 missed appointment. So over the course of a week, that's clearly quite a large opportunity cost. And obviously this is unplanned downtime for you, because this is appointments that just are kind of no-shows or late cancellations. So different from time that you may plan away from the client side of your business, where you might have planned time to be doing training or on a call like this. You know, this could be quite 11th hour. But actually, how much work does it take to set up an appointment anyway? And this is another interesting statistic I've used before. Now, this may be a little high for your business, but there is a business called X.AI, and they build meeting software. They did a survey in 2014 of 12,411, very precise number of meetings globally, to understand, after the initial meeting request email went out, how many subsequent emails were required for people to actually settle on a firm slot that could work, including reschedules and everything else. And they arrived at a figure of 8.02, so over 8 emails backwards and forwards. Now, that's in all contexts, and I suspect is probably substantially higher than you will see with your clients. But even if it's only 2 emails for every appointment, if you then layer over the fact that 1 in 7 of those is being cancelled after it's been set up as well, that's starting to add up to, again, quite a bit of time backwards and forwards, where either you or a receptionist, or depending on your setting, is spending time going backwards and forwards with a client, just purely trying to agree when they're going to come in and have their treatment and pay you. So again, think about what that means in your business. It obviously will be the sort of statistic that will vary quite a bit. So thinking about some of these problems, some of where this waste occurs, is the kind of thing that I do within my business for businesses of various different types. And we use a technique very often for that called systems thinking. And systems in this context doesn't mean systems like an IT system. It means thinking about the whole system, in this case, the business, in a holistic way, and taking a step back and actually trying to understand overall what is your business trying to do? What is it there for? And what parts have to fit together to make it work? The reason it's really a powerful methodology for this sort of stuff is that rather than some of the traditional ways of thinking about these problems, where you think about each piece of the problem individually and try and optimize that piece, that process, that piece of software, whatever it might be, in order to make that bit work without any thought for how all the bits fit together. This steps back and says, actually, what you're really trying to do is make everything work together harmoniously. And that might mean that every individual piece is only 90% as good as it could be. But if they all work well together, you'll still get a better result than having each piece of your business being 100% effective, but then really terrible at interfacing with each other. So what do I mean by pieces of the business? I mean the large steps like the booking process, the appointment itself, taking payment, your marketing processes, etc. So having all of that stuff that joins up holistically and works together so that each step reinforces the ones either side of it in the process is really important. And, you know, as we go through this, hopefully you'll start to see kind of how that works. Often what I find is that there's a core part of the business. So in the case of this group, I would think the kind of what happens in the appointment is a piece of process that you guys all understand deeply well, because it's the core of your competencies, the core of your skills. It's the thing that you bring to the world. But often the rest of the things that need to happen to make that come to life have never been kind of planned through in the same way. So let's think about what that means for therapy businesses. So you have the appointment. That is your core activity that you do. I'm not going to talk very much about that today because that's going to be different for all of you, but frankly, you all know that way better than I do. So I'm not going to try and teach you how to do that. But I'm going to try and talk to you about how the whole fits together and where therefore there may be some opportunities to make life a little bit simpler. And I promise that this won't all be high level theoretical stuff. As we go through, you'll start to see how it comes to life, but important just that you understand where I'm coming from with this. So what needs to happen in order to have an appointment? Well, before the appointment, someone needs a process to make a booking, right? So we kind of talked about that already, but there needs to be some sort of process to book the appointment. And then after the appointment, you need to take payment, and that's how your business runs: booking, appointment, payment, right? That's the flow. Or is it? Well, I would argue it's not, that there's a couple of other steps missing, but ones which are often not considered in anywhere near as much detail. But they're equally important if you want to really make your business run efficiently so that you can spend your time on that appointment step and not having to do all the other stuff around it. And that's really where we're trying to get to here, is that you can spend as much of your time and energy as possible on the thing that you love doing, but that you've got a self-reinforcing process around it that just helps everything to come together. So before you get bookings, you have to get clients from somewhere. So some sort of marketing activity has to happen in order to tell people that you're out there, what you do, bring them through to however you take your bookings, in order that they can then flow through. And you may have different levels of sophistication right now around your marketing. Some of you may have some quite advanced stuff going on. Some of you may not really have done very much at all. And marketing can mean a whole load of different things. It could mean Facebook ads. It could mean word of mouth, referrals from happy clients. It could mean traditional print advertising. There's lots of things that can happen there. But fundamentally, that's the activity of encouraging people to actually come and make the booking with you. But there's another step as well that I think is hugely overlooked in many types of businesses, and this is really powerful. And it's powerful for two things. Firstly, getting a review, having some sort of a review process is very, very powerful in itself, because actually it's getting you out there the social proof for other potential customers that your business is going to deliver what you say you're going to deliver. You're going to deliver the results that you promise. But actually also, in the way that I've drawn it here, I think you can probably see it's also important for a really simple reason. It actually joins up the cycle, and that's important because what that means is you've then got a process that things are moving around. So the review process reinforces your marketing. Marketing reinforces bookings, which gets you more appointments, which get you paid, and you request a review, which gets you more, and so it goes. Which means once you build this, there's an element to which it becomes more self-sustaining, because actually you don't need to be going out the whole time and feeding lots of stuff into the marketing funnel. Of course, there will be times that you will want to, when you want to take on more clients and you've got some capacity, but to a greater extent, it will continue to sort of feed itself in a cycle. And once you get those sorts of cyclical business processes, they can become really powerful in terms of allowing your business to work for you rather than you have to work for your business. So if we then step back, we say this is the overall sort of system of your business. Now, it's obviously hugely simplified. There's loads of other things that have to happen underneath these 5 blobs, but at high level, these 5 blobs articulate kind of how a business runs, and they're different in different sorts of industries, right? So if I was talking to you and you were in construction, instead of that appointment blob, you would have some different activity in there around building something, building a house, whatever it might be. Instead of booking, you might have a quoting step. But fundamentally, for all businesses, you can kind of distill it down into a cycle that looks kind of like this. Some have got a couple of extra steps. Some, well, actually, no, I was going to say some have got less steps. I would argue it's probably not really many less steps. A retail business, you could probably take the booking out. But other than that, fundamentally, these are the key steps. Okay, so if we then start thinking about some of the problems that you might start to see, and I said earlier, I'm not going to talk about the appointment stage, so I'll sort of slightly grade that out on this slide. So what sorts of problems or challenges might you find in your business around some of these steps? So booking. So we've talked a bit about this, time to schedule, missed appointments. Maybe conflicts with your own personal diary. We've all got things that go on outside of our jobs and our businesses. Maybe you've got kids, or maybe you're a carer for relatives, or you've got other activities that rely on your time, and maybe those are not always completely predictable. But you don't necessarily want to manage all of those in your business diary. So then you're kind of having to flick between them, so that you know whether or not you're free. And if things change, you might have to be calling out clients and rescheduling. So those sorts of things. So there's some problems potentially in that booking stage there. In the payment stage, there's a whole bunch of things that I hear about in the payment stage. There's the real practical problem. So payments just failing, right? So someone writes you a check and the check bounces, or someone says they'll pay on a bank's payment and they just don't. If you take cash, there's the whole sort of issue around cash handling, which is obviously particularly topical with COVID. Lots of people not wanting to handle cash, and indeed some businesses I work with don't want to handle checks either for the same reason. If you take your payments by backs, if you're not a limited company, how do you feel about giving out your personal bank details? A lot of the time I hear people not unreasonably quite uncomfortable about doing that, and having had a previous role in my career where I worked for a bank. I can tell you not without good reason, because things, obviously can happen if you give out your bank details. Taking regular payments obviously relies on either the client paying you regularly by whatever means, or you asking them to pay them. But actually also start to see other issues. So, sometimes, particularly small businesses, people say, actually, I feel kind of awkward asking people for money for the service that I've provided. And that might manifest in terms of delaying asking, or how they set their pricing strategy. Perhaps they're not charging as much as they maybe feel they could, because they sort of feel that makes them a bit uncomfortable to have that conversation. And then we get into the more kind of accounting issues. So you've got to record the payment somewhere. You at least potentially need to issue invoices. Obviously, that slightly depends on whether you're VAT registered and a number of other things, but you may need to do that. And the last one on there, which again, this is an issue today if you're VAT registered. It's an issue in 2022 if you're not, which is the Making Tax Digital regime, where HMRC require that you actually submit your tax return using a digital tool. If you are managing at the moment your payment information, invoicing information on, for example, a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, that ultimately will come to an end at that point. That is not an acceptable format to file your tax returns, and you will have to use one of the dedicated tools. As I say, it's an issue today if you're VAT registered. For income tax, both corporation and personal, it is not currently an issue, but the latest advice from HMRC, and some of this was updated as recently as yesterday, they are now saying 2022 is the target date for rolling that out to other forms of tax. So some practical issues there for anyone that's kind of working on paper. Not ones that are so sort of short on time that you need to panic, but certainly something that is worth having in your mind and thinking about as this will be an issue that needs to be solved. So following through the rest of the process, reviews, and I touched again on some of these earlier on. Actually, a lot of businesses don't do reviews because they feel kind of uncomfortable. They've given the customer service, and then they don't really feel comfortable saying, "Oh, by the way, would you give me a review?" Again, often in the same time as asking for money. A lot of businesses actually will say to me, does it even make a difference? I'm here to tell you, yes, it does definitely make a difference. If you can get a good number of reviews on a platform like Google, if you can get your Google My Business with at least 10, ideally 20 to 25 good quality reviews, you will start showing up much more in the searches. Google will favor you for that, move you up. It'll be easier to find, but when people do find you, there's a huge body of evidence that shows that they're far more likely to buy from you. Some estimates up to 20 times as likely to buy from a business that has a good number of reviews. And actually, interestingly, it doesn't have to be necessarily 5-star reviews. Apparently, the most trustworthy to have is 4.7 on average. Because straight 5-star reviews, apparently people think, well, maybe this is a bit manufactured. So it's worth thinking about, but the point is you should have them. What if you accidentally ask people twice? What if you've got someone that comes to you every week and you just keep asking them every week? They're going to get annoyed, and then they might give you a 1-star review, and that would be even worse than having no review. So that's a concern, and a very legitimate one. How will you even know when you get a review? I'm sure most of you don't wake up in the morning and check your Google listing every single morning. If any of you do, then I'm sorry, but I don't think many of us do that. So how do you know when it's there? And what if it's a bad review? What if someone's gone on there and put a 1-star review on there? And sometimes people will do that for reasons that are absolutely not your fault, and you would want a right to reply, even if you can't change the review. You would at least want to know it's happened and have the ability to put some sort of comment on there saying, I'm sorry you felt like that. This is what we did as, to make up for whatever the incident was that you're saying happened, or whatever. You would at least want to be aware of it. And there's a sort of fear that if you don't ask for reviews, you know, if you do ask for reviews, rather, that you might trigger someone giving you a bad review. The reality is, if someone's upset with your service enough to give you a bad review, they're going to go and find your Google listing and give you a bad review, or your Facebook listing and give you a bad review. They're not going to wait for you to ask them to do that. The flip side, though, is if they're really happy with your service, they might not actually give you the good review unless you do ask them. So asking is unlikely to significantly change the number of negative reviews you might get from people who have an axe to grind, but actually is quite likely to increase the number of positive reviews you get. And obviously that dilutes the power of the odd rogue one that might be on there. And then the last point really in this cycle is around the marketing. As I say, this can cover a sort of multitude of activities. But, you know, who do you market your business to? What do you actually say to them? You know, where do you do that marketing? Those are all kind of questions that people say, well, actually, I can't answer these. And so kind of paralysis can set in and actually end up doing nothing. So that's sort of some of the problems that we see looking at this process. So let's start solving it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to suggest, and some of you may be completely cool with this, and other people may absolutely feel this is unacceptable. You need to decide with everything I'm saying to you today whether it will work for your business, but I would gently challenge you to just try some of these things, even if at first you think that will never work. Try and look at it through the lens of how could it work, and this is definitely one that fits into that pot. I've said this to people a number of times at these sorts of events, and very often people say, there's no way I could possibly switch around the payment and appointment order and ask people to pay me before they've had their appointment. Well, maybe try it, because actually, you know, most goods that we buy, you pay before you use them. Services, I get that you generally use it and then pay. But actually, if people know what they're going to get and you ask them to pay, perhaps you need to, you know, give them the comfort of saying, if you're not happy, you'll get a money back guarantee. But try taking the payment at the time of booking rather than after the appointment finishes. And there's a really simple reason for that, which is if someone has paid, your cancellation no-show rate will go through the floor, because they've already paid out for that appointment. They have committed to you. It's in their head. They feel that they want to be there. Whereas if you're collecting the payment at the time of the appointment and they choose to cancel the day before the appointment, at that point, they haven't made any commitment financially and therefore probably emotionally to you. So, you know, it's a good strategy for reducing no-shows, and it's good to see actually comments in the chat box that some of you have started doing that already. So I would certainly say, you know, try it and see if it works. I've had some quite strong reactions when I've posed this to groups before, but actually a couple of people who really pushed back when I suggested it went away, tried it, came back and said, you know what, it actually works fine. None of our clients have complained. They're all fine with it. They get it. So think about whether you could try it, even just try it with one or two clients. Maybe, you know, if you've got some repeat offenders, that's probably a great place to begin. Then I think the next thing that we would think about is actually, we've understood how all the bits of this problem fit together. So let's start thinking about each of these steps and what we can do inside each one, but through the lens of how it fits into the overall system, the overall process. So I'll start with booking. And you're going to see 4 quite similar pages now as we go through each of these steps. But the way I've laid this out is the middle yellow box is the step that I'm talking about. But for context, I'm showing you on each side kind of what it relies on and what relies on it, so that you can really understand how every step fits into the chain, and you can start to see how this stuff fits together. And this is where this approach is much better than a more traditional way of thinking about a business process, because a traditional business process, you would only have that yellow box, and you kind of wouldn't think about the context of what else it might mess up if you do this wrong, and what you might need in the right place. But we talked a bit about well, all of these issues on booking already. So, some solutions here, and I would propose there's a really simple solution here, which is put your diary system online, make it directly available to clients. There are tools available that you can do that with. You can link it to both your personal and your business diary in a manner where your client will see the available booking slots when you are free. They do not see the contents of your diary, which means they can't see which other appointments, which other clients you've got booked in. So that obviously avoids any risk of any sort of data security, GDPR type issues with just publishing your diary. And in terms of your personal diary, they can't see the contents of that, which obviously keeps your personal privacy properly under control. And you can have that set up in a manner where it will look for your free and busy time across both of those diaries, or multiple diaries, depending on how you manage things, and presents appointments of the appropriate length to your client. But actually then when that goes in, that always goes into the business diary, for example. So hopefully with a new running order, you're going to reduce the cancellations anyway by taking payment up front. But actually, you're going to do that at the time of booking. And again, these tools will integrate with payment systems. So I'll talk to payments next because that's the next block, but they will integrate directly with payment systems. So you can actually take an online payment at the time the client books. And this can all happen completely on the client's time. It could be 3 o'clock in the morning for them, and they could suddenly think, I really want to get this booked in. They could go online, they could find a slot in your diary, they could book it, they could pay, all sorted. You get up the next morning, it's already in your diary for the day, requiring no work from you to negotiate the time, no work from you to process the payment or anything else. You can see, right, they're booked in and I'm already paid, it's all good to go. So that's an immediate huge time saver for a lot of businesses. If we then move on and think about the payment step, so we talked about a number of sort of issues that can arise there. By linking up that online payment gateway, you take a whole load of these away, right? If the payment is going to fail, it will fail when they try and pay on their card at the point they want to book. So they won't even have booked with you if they haven't been able to pay. So that problem literally just goes away. Cash handling, again, goes away because you're taking payment online. You don't have to give out your bank details at all. You can host it through a service where they just securely put in their credit or debit card details, and the money comes through to you. You can even set those payment gateways up to take a regular payment. So you could take a monthly payment if you've got a subscription plan or something like that. You don't even need to have a kind of face-to-face or telephone discussion with your client, because it's just part of the booking process. They go on, they choose the slot, the payment window comes up, they put in their details, they press OK, takes the payment, it books the appointment, it sends them an email to confirm, and they're paid and you're booked, and that all goes away. But it also creates electronic records of the payments. Those can be used to issue invoices if you're in a business that needs to invoice. They can also feed directly into an accounting system. So if you're on an accounting platform like, say, QuickBooks or Xero, or to the popular ones, there are obviously others available. These payment gateways can directly interface with that and just feed the information in, so that then when you or your bookkeeper or accountant do your accounts, the data's just there and it just needs to be just matched up, bosh, rather than having to manually enter information into a spreadsheet where you might maybe type in the wrong day or the wrong amount or the wrong name, or all those other things that might go wrong. You might not discover until you get to the end of your tax year and suddenly something's not quite adding up right. So that's an opportunity for quite a lot of simplification. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about the appointments, but clearly if you know that all the appointments are prepaid, that's really, really helpful. But the other thing is, if they do want to reschedule, actually the combination of that booking calendar engine and the payment gateway will allow them to actually reschedule. So they'll receive an email that says, here's your appointment, but it will have a link on it that will say, if you wish to reschedule, click here. And you can set policies within those tools that say they can reschedule, but not within 24 hours, for example, or if it's within 24 hours, they have to pay again, or whatever you want to do. And if you need to send them information ahead of time, or even if you need to send them materials like a questionnaire to fill in, or forms of any sort that need filling in, that can all be done automatically ahead of time when they make the booking. That can all be triggered through various forms of fairly simple automation to be delivered to them at that point, so that by the time they come in for the appointment, you've already got all of that information completed, which means you don't have to potentially sit them in a waiting room or wherever else and ask them to fill out a paper form, because actually they've done it all ahead of time. Or if you do have to ask them to do that, it's only because they're the one that didn't return the form. And of course, there'll always be one, I'm sure. But all of that can be done ahead of time at their own convenience in the comfort of their own home, rather than taking up time for you and potentially for your reception staff to have to sort out. And the return's electronic. So, obviously, if you've then got electronic client records anywhere, you can just automatically file that. And by the way, I'm not going to go deeply into it today, but I will just make a quick point that I've heard raised before when I've talked to some therapists, where they said, I don't have electronic records because I'm worried about GDPR. I just want to touch on the fact that GDPR applies just as much to paper records as it does to electronic records. If you are of that mindset, I have bad news for you, which is that you are already in scope for GDPR, and actually it's a lot harder to prove you're compliant with GDPR if your records are on paper than if they're electronic, because if they're on paper, you can't prove who has read them or who has not. If they're electronically held, many systems, you can actually tell who's accessed them. So happy to talk to anyone that's got specific questions about that. I do some consultancy on GDPR. I haven't got it quite to hand, but I usually have a copy of the Data Protection Act here as a prop at this point, but I can assure you it's an inch thick and 338 pages of lovely bedtime reading. So I don't have insomnia anymore. Good, right, reviews. So we talked about after the appointment, things that happen. So in terms of asking for reviews, well, what if you had a tool that actually, after the appointment, automatically put your clients into what we call a funnel, a process, a structured process that would send them a message and say, hey, hope you had a great appointment today. If you did, would you mind leaving me a review, leaving us a review, whatever the right language is. And then if maybe after a week they hadn't done anything, because these things get lost, and people think, oh yeah, I must do that, but I'm on the bus home or whatever. Sends them another one and just says, hey, just wanted to check in and see whether you would be okay to recommend us to anyone. It really makes a difference to our business to get these recommendations, and we really appreciate it. And maybe one final one, I don't know, a month later, right? But a tool that could do that, that could know if it's already emailed someone in the last 6 months and just immediately say, well, this person's already had this. They've either left a review or they haven't, but I'm not going to ask them again for 6 months. Or whatever, maybe 12 months, but 6 months seems reasonable. Can do all of that, but that can also monitor those reviews. So those reviews might go on Google, they might go on Facebook, they might go on various other places, but Google and Facebook are the two key ones really that people are going to look for you on. Monitor those. When you get a good review, it could immediately publish that to your social media, which is kind of moving on into the marketing point, but you could immediately publish that. That's clearly great marketing. If you get a bad review, can immediately alert you with an email saying, hey, someone's left a bad review. With the link, you can get straight on immediately. You can contact them. And I can see a couple of people saying they've got systems that already message clients and ask for a review. So that's a great start. I'm sorry if I'm a bit slow on reading some of the comments because they're on a different screen, but that is a great start. And I would absolutely say if you haven't got that sort of system, you should get one. There are different ways of doing it. Sometimes it's built into the platforms that you may use, or there are some standalone tools. And I'll talk a little bit more about that right at the end of the presentation if you need a bit of signposting towards places you could do this stuff. But I would definitely say doing that makes a big difference. I helped a business implement this about 2 months ago now, and in the previous 10 years, they've managed to achieve 6 reviews. In the first 4 weeks after it went live, they achieved 30 reviews, all of which were 4 or 5 stars, and they are able to directly show that off the back of that, that their number of inquiries and new business has gone up. With about a 3-week lag to the reviews. You can clearly see they've changed nothing else in their business. You can clearly see how much difference that's made. So obviously that will vary in different industries and different geographies, but it's been hugely effective for them. And they reckon literally it paid for itself within days of being done. But we'll talk more about costs and benefits again at the very end. And I promise we're getting towards the end now. So last step I'll talk about is marketing. So I would absolutely advocate here that every business should have some form of CRM system. Now that might be built into whatever you already use, or it might be something that you should invest in, or invest may be the wrong word because there are some good free ones around, but something that you should consider putting in separately. But a CRM system, for those who are not familiar, is a hugely powerful tool, because what it allows you to do is to track for all of your customers and all of your potential customers, who they are, how they found you, what contact you've had with them. So if they are not a customer, but you've exchanged some emails with them, you've got all of them in an archive together. If they are a customer, you can obviously see what treatments they've had. You can keep other notes and information, but you can also then use that to drive things like email campaigns. So if you want to do a special offer campaign, you would be asking your customers whether they were prepared to opt into marketing mailings. And again, that's a GDPR thing you do need to do, but these tools will make that very easy to do. You might have a form on your website for new inquiries that goes through that can automatically trigger certain materials being sent out to people when they are interested. And you can then also integrate that with other tools that you've got. So I've talked a bit about Google My Business. You absolutely, if you haven't got one, make sure you get a Google My Business account set up, which you can do by going to the Google homepage, logging in, and the little grid of dots in the top right hand corner. If you click on that, you'll see there's an option that says My Business, and click on that and go through, and it'll help you find your business and claim it. And then you can fill in lots of information around when you're open and where you are and websites and all sorts of other things. So if you haven't done that, that is hugely powerful in terms of getting you found on Google. Definitely do that. I think the other thing that is becoming increasingly important is the Bing equivalent, because Microsoft are pushing out the Edge browser more and more aggressively to anyone on Windows 10 now. And I think a fair proportion of people over the next 3 to 6 months are going to find that they are by default using Edge rather than Chrome as their main browser. And Edge by default uses Bing rather than Google. So there is also something called Bing Places for Business, and again you access it from the front page of Bing, and it's a similar sort of thing. In fact, they just added a feature last week where you can actually sync it to your Google My Business listing, so that you only have to maintain one of the two of them, which is super helpful. But absolutely do that. And the other thing a good CRM system can do is potentially provide you with landing pages, which are really simple, like one-page websites that you can drive people to for simple inquiries, and integrate with your website. So on your website, you will be able to capture lead information, but also, as I've talked about under the reviews, good review systems will allow you to actually put a little widget on your website that automatically pops up and shows. You've seen it on some sites, particularly Trustpilot does this quite a lot, albeit I wouldn't recommend Trustpilot because I think their starting package is about £200 a month. It's really for big business, not small business, but there are small business versions that do the same sort of thing. And indeed, I use one on my website. It just gives me here's all the reviews, here's some comments, testimonials, and it just automatically picks that up from all the review sites. So I don't need to keep going on and maintaining it every day whenever I get a new review, it just happens. And that's really the point of this stuff, is it just happens. So I'm nearly done, I promise. Let's just talk a little bit about the benefits of doing some of this stuff. So we talked about cancellations. Hopefully you get less of those, less time manually booking appointments, much easier to take regular payments and automatic payments. In fact, this suggests regular payments only, but actually all payments automatically. It will also improve your online presence, your number of reviews, which in turn should lead to more clients. And before we talk, I'm going to talk one final page about costs. I just want you just to dwell on that question in blue. How much is one appointment actually worth to you? It's going to be different for different businesses. The average therapist across all therapies across all of the UK, the average is £62 for an hour-long appointment, apparently. Now that will cover an absolute multitude of sins. Some of you may be charging a fraction of that. Some of you may be charging a multiple of that. That's a kind of a, if you like, finger in the air, a best guess at what saving an hour a week might be worth to you. So let's talk about the costs. And I think the key message here is much less than you think. Most of the things I've talked about have entry-level platforms that are available that literally are free. The online calendar system, you can take a tool like Calendly that has a free plan. If you don't mind their branding being on it and you only want to link it up to one diary, completely free. Payment system, I'll come back to in a minute. Reviews, there's a tool that I use called Nice Job. It has a completely free option. There are some features that you can't use, but you can use it in its completely free mode for most of what I talked about today. CRM system, there's tools like HubSpot, which again, if you take some feature restrictions, you can use absolutely free. I use the free version of that. Automation, so to drive all of this and stick all of this together, if you want to make all this happen really automatically, you can use a tool called Zapier, where for a limited number of automations each month, again, you can use the completely free tier. There are some platforms you can't connect to. So if you wanted to connect, for example, to your accounting package, you have to go onto the first paid tier to do that. But you can do a lot of it for free. So the point is you can at least start to prove quite a lot of this stuff is free or for free. The one bit where there is a pretty unavoidable cost is the online payment system. And if you use a tool like Stripe, and I would certainly recommend Stripe over PayPal, because PayPal's nearly twice as expensive as this. But Stripe is 1.4% plus 30 cents, euro cents, I think that is, per transaction. So, okay, that's potentially going to cost you maybe £1, maybe a couple of pounds on an appointment, depends on obviously what your appointment fee is. But if you think about that in the context of how much time potentially you're saving here, actually, I would argue that there are very few businesses for which 1.4% is cost effective to do manually, unless you are the fastest, least error-prone typist that has ever lived. But you may need to upgrade from some of the basic versions. So I tried to think about realistically, for those of you at maybe the sort of the larger end here, if you had a clinic with 3 members of staff or 3 therapists with 1,000 clients, and you wanted to do completely automate all of this stuff, what would you be looking at? Well, the answer there is about £120 a month. So that's 2 hours of therapist's time per month. That would be kind of some indications. And see a couple of questions in the chat. So James asked, how much is Nice Job? Nice Job has a free version, which gives you a lot of functionality. I think the first paid tier of it is $45 per month. It would be part of that 120 that I calculated there, US dollars. I think it may be Canadian dollars. Actually, they're a Canadian company. But actually, I've done a number of implementations for people who have not needed any of the paid features at all. So you can certainly get this stuff up and running for free. Where you need to start paying for Nice Job is if you want to be able to do things like tailor the timings of the messaging, if you want to be able to include some of the more advanced website widgets and things like that. but they're very transparent. I like Nice Job Actually as a business. They're very transparent about what you do or don't get. And they have higher paid tiers, by the way. You know, there's a premium tier and a super premium tier, so you can spend a lot more. But I would advocate that the free, or if you're a larger business, no more than the $45 one would be the way to go. CRM system, Pauline's asked about. I personally like HubSpot. I like it for the reason that the free version of HubSpot allows you to have an unlimited number of clients. It allows you to have a high degree of integration with other systems. You know, so if you're using Outlook for your email, you can integrate it with that so that your emails automatically go into HubSpot. If you're using Gmail and the G Suite Google tools, you can integrate those really easily as well. And you can do all of that with the free tier. It has some fancy features you can do if you go up to the paid tier, which from memory is, I think, £27 a month. As long as you don't have more than 1,000 customers. It gets expensive when you've got more than 1,000 customers in there, or can get expensive. But that's really if you want to be doing things like running automated email campaigns and running things like support desks and stuff like that, which are really more appropriate for kind of IT companies probably than for therapists. So HubSpot is a really good tool. I did promise you at the end a freebie. I will put in the chat a link I put out or put together last week, a quick checklist covering a lot of what I've talked about today. I'll give you a link to it. You can download the checklist, but when you do, you'll get an email with the download link. And in that email, there are links to my personal preferences on the tools that I've talked about today. So you can just go straight on and grab them and have a look at least. So I will pop that in the chat now. In terms of online calendar, Finola, I use Calendly. Some people use another tool called Acuity. Personally, I found Calendly to be more friendly for whoever is booking, and from my perspective, about equal in terms of complexity. So that's why I chose Calendly. Again, the free version gives you full functionality, as long as you don't mind their little banner in the corner. If you want to take that off, or if you want to use multiple diaries, I think it's £9 a month per person. So obviously, if you've got 3 therapists in your clinic, that's going to be £27 a month. But if there's only one of you, that's going to be £9. But you can still run it completely free. It's not, you don't have to pay for that at all. It just depends how prominently you use it. What it gives you is an emailable link that you can send people. You can also put a link on your website, and they just click through and they get a calendar and they can just pick the slots that work. You can configure different types of appointments in there. And I think all versions, including the free, fully integrate with Stripe to take payment at the time of booking if you want to do that.
I've just upgraded in Calendly for the paid version. Can't remember. Yeah, maybe it's like $9 a month. But yeah, it gives me so much more. And also with Calendly, people, because of potential students who don't know what they want to do, they can book a free consultation with me. It's half an hour. So you can actually preload the appointment with the questions you want them to answer, so that you've got a basis or an idea of how the call is going to go. So that's why I really like that.
Yeah, it's a great tool. It's so much easier, and you just have that security of knowing that you're not, you know, there are ways you can publish your actual Google Diary or Outlook Diary onto the internet, but of course people can see what's in it then, and you think, well, I don't want one of my clients to see that I'm talking to someone else and who they are and their phone number, you know, a different time today, you know, particularly for what you guys do. That's, you know, there's obviously huge privacy concerns around that. So Calendly and Acuity as an alternative are great tools because they just mask that away completely. So they just get a list of free slots. And if you only want to do certain types of appointments on certain days of the week or certain times of the day, you can build that in. So you may say, actually, I've got this type of treatment that's only 30 minutes. I want to do them back to back on a Monday morning until midday. And then after that, I want to do a different type of treatment that's 2 hours that I only do in the afternoons every day. You know, you've got the flexibility to do that. So it's a brilliant system, actually. Very simple. and I think, you know, really quite intuitive to set up. Albeit, what I would say is, if anyone needs help setting any of these things up, obviously you can get in touch with me. If you grab my checklist, it's got some contact details on there, and you know, I'm happy to obviously talk to people if they need support. I do tool setups as well that are, you know, in the interest of transparency, that are chargeable appointments if people need me to come and set up these tools. But you know, if you just need a quick question, grab the checklist, get the email from the checklist, and just drop me a line. I'm happy to help. But I don't know how much time we've got left now, Jane. I'm conscious that we've gone pretty much to the hour, actually, despite me saying that we probably have 20 minutes for questions. But if anyone has got questions, then we've answered a lot in the chat. But if anyone has anything else they want to shout at me now, then please feel free.
Any questions? Anyone want to come on live and ask a question, or if you're shy to share, put in chat. Or is everyone bamboozled?
Well, I hope not, but maybe. I'll pop my email address as well in the chat as well, in case anyone wants to just get in touch afterwards. I know sometimes on these groups, it's you don't always want to ask, or things come to you later on. And obviously, there will also be people watching this on replay. So, Jane, I know you're going to post this obviously online. If you want to tag me or give people my my contact details there, that's absolutely fine. Happy to talk to anyone who's watching this on playback as well. I'm
intrigued. Where did your name? Well, obviously not Mark. Where did your business name come from? Cobalt Beach.
It was an interesting journey, honestly. At the time I started the business, I knew where my skills were. So I knew I wanted to do something around business process, IT, but I wasn't sure exactly where. There's lots of things. I mean, you say to people I work in IT, and it can mean anything from I fix printers to, you know, I make space rockets go to the moon almost. You know, it's a huge range of things. So I sort of went into it thinking, well, I deliberately don't want to be overly specific about what I do, because I want flexibility to just play with it a bit and see where it goes. So I just wrote down a huge number of lists of words I liked and thought were interesting, and combinations I thought were interesting, and played around with them over a few days, and ended up with a short list of 4 or 5 that stuck. And then I went online and went to see where, you know, found that all the others had been pinched. So I was like, well, that works for me. I'm in Brighton, so I'm by the sea, so you know, lucky enough to have the beach. So there's the link there, but beyond that, nothing massively scientific other than
I know, but I like
the colour.
Yeah, I like Brighton. Apart Brighton doesn't like me, because every time I'm in Brighton, it really rains. So really,
compared to Spain, I think it rains in most places, Jane.
Oh, well, no, when I'm in Brighton, I was there in March before lockdown, and I managed to just get back to Spain before they went into lockdown. So I was there for 4 days. And I didn't like the hotel where the conference was, because I used to spend a lot of time in Brighton. So I decided to say, 2 minutes down the road, and it peed down with rain, and I was stropping along to the other hotel every morning, and every night stropping back to my hotel in the pouring down with rain. So lesson learned, always book your hotel where the conference is, and you stay dry.
Well, if you're back in Brighton again, you must give me a shout.
Yeah, I will do. Well, I'm supposed to be back. The conference is, I think, again, April next year, March or April next year. I'll let you know. Obviously, with Spain.
Cross our fingers, can't we?
We can cross our fingers. And the thing is, I don't want to go out of Spain and come back in, because at the moment you've got to have a PCR test. Don't really want that. So I never ever went to Chocky Wocky. Jamie said she was gutted when Chocky Wocky went.
Yeah.
Because my niece, she got married. Oh, my niece's wedding is going to be on the chateau next week, because she got married in a chateau, so we'll all be on TV. But the only reason I mention that is because she went to Chocky Wocky on one of her hen do's, and they were telling me what it was, and I thought, oh no, I don't think I could. No, that'd be a bit too much for me. Or my friend had her wedding cake from there. Did you ever go, Mark, to Jockey Wocky?
When my brother's in New Zealand now, but when he got married, they got their wedding cake from there, and it's just enormous. You know, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It must have taken hours to make, but I just used to like walking past it, just looking in the window. It's such a shame they have gone. It's a real kind of classic.
Yeah. Did they just go under?
Yeah, I think they moved premises, and I think reading between the lines that they upscaled a bit more than they could afford to in terms of the location. They had a lot of footfall, but actually their business didn't necessarily, you know, it wasn't walk-ins. You're not going to walk in and spend hundreds of pounds on one of their big cakes. So it looked amazing, but I think they were better off probably financially when they were a bit tucked away. People knew where they were. People would go out their way to find them. And I think that was probably a bit of a mistake, but I don't know. Obviously lots of businesses have struggled over the last, well, not just with COVID, really, over the last little while. So these things are always complicated. But
well, Mark, thank you so much for giving up your time. As I said, I'll send you a link to the video as well. And as usual, girls, you know that girls, that's not very condescending. Ladies, because we don't think we've ever had any men come on, even though there are men in the group, they're even shyer than the women. As usual, I will upload the video and then put the link in the group. So obviously you can go back and view the video, and there will be, I'll do a sheet with some key points with Mark's offer link and his email address as well.
Fantastic. Brilliant.
Okay.
Well, lovely to meet you all.
And you.
I wish you all well. And as I say, if anyone wants to get in touch, please feel free. And hopefully I can help you out. I sometimes think I'm a bit of a therapist myself, because I counsel people when they're very stressed by their computers. So.
Oh, that's me. That's definitely me at the moment. The internet goes, and then my printer just goes offline, and then I have to reset everything. And my internet goes off about we've been quite good on this one, but it can go off every 10 minutes. It's driving me insane. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Speak to you later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.